Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Breakfast Extra. I wish I can tell you what's happening behind the scenes. But let me start with something we've heard before, a warning. The federal government says 33 states and the FCT are at high risk of flooding in 2026, with over 14,000 communities across more than 200 local government areas expected to be affected. And almost at the same time, stakeholders are calling for urgent reforms to Nigeria's budgeting system, saying it needs to be more realistic, more sustainable, and more aligned with development priorities. Now pause there for a second. Because if our budgeting is truly aligned with development, would flooding still feel like an annual event? Because this is not new. Every year, we hear the same thing. Flood warnings issued, communities at risk, governments preparing, and then months later, we're counting losses, lives gone, homes destroyed, families displaced. In 2022, over 600 Nigerians lost their lives to floods. Millions were displaced, billions of naira in damage. And since then, the story has repeated itself in different forms across different states, almost like a script we refuse to write, a terrible Nollywood movie. So the question is not whether it will rain. Surely it shall rain. The question is, what have we done with what we already know? Because Nigeria does not lack plans. Oh no. Nigeria does not lack data. Some do. And Nigeria definitely does not lack budgets. We have it every 3 market days. For decades, we've had the Ecological Fund, annual allocations for flood control, erosion management, disaster response. Agencies like NIMET, and the Ministry of Water Resources all set up to anticipate, to prepare, and to respond. And yet, here we are again. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part of the conversation. What happens after the budget is passed? Because history shows us a pattern. Big allocations, ambitious projections, but weak implementation. Projects that are delayed, abandoned, or never even started. Funds that are released on paper, but not felt on the ground. So maybe the problem is not the absence of money, no. Maybe the problem is the absence of follow-through. Because flooding in Nigeria is no longer just a natural disaster. It is a man-made cycle, yes. Drainages are not cleared. Urban planning is ignored. People build where water should flow, and early warnings rarely translate into early actions. So this morning, let me ask a simple question. If we already know the states are at risk, the communities involved, and even the timeline of the disaster, what exactly are we waiting for? Because a budget is not a promise until it becomes a result. And maybe, just maybe, 2026 should not be another year where we issue warnings and prepare noodles, oil, rice, gari, aka relief materials after the damage is done. But a year where we finally prove that planning can prevent disaster, and we hope that it does. Good morning again, and welcome to Breakfast Extra for the Saturday edition. And you're going to be having breakfast with me and Chiwete, aka Chi. Good morning, Chiwete.
Good morning to you, Queen. It's good to be here, of course. Your monologue is quite thought-provoking, and it's really, really funny that every year there are these predictions, and it's almost similar to even our insecurity cases.
Right.
You hear information that, very soon bandits will attack a particular area, right? They will get the intel. People will hear about it. Nothing will be done, and when it happens, it looks like the security authorities are not there. I mean, it even happened with the particular attack that took the brigadier in Borno State. The governor of Borno confirmed that information got to the military, that military formation was going to be attacked.
Well, Chichi, hold that thought. We have a lot of conversations today, and we're going to run it through. So I'm coming over, and we'll start the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigeria, and welcome to Breakfast Extra, your front row seat to the stories shaping Nigeria and the African continent. Now, today, we're diving into critical conversations that touch on governance, security, and the realities affecting everyday living. Now, from the corridors of power to communities on the front lines, we're asking the tough questions. What exactly is the role of lawmakers in truly representing the people? And are Nigerian legislators living up to the responsibility? That's a big question. We'll also be looking at developments within the African Democratic Congress as internal tensions, expulsions, and constitutional amendments raise fresh questions about the party's direction ahead of 2027. Plus, a disturbing security story out of Lagos where operatives uncovered a suspected illegal baby factory in Badagry. We'll also examine how these networks operate and why they continue to thrive. And with the rainy season fast approaching, the federal government is sounding the alarm, warning that over 14,000 communities across 33 states are at risk of flooding this year. And of course, beyond Nigeria, we turn our focus to South Africa, where opposition leader Julius Malema has been sentenced in firearms case, a development that's sparking debate about law, politics, and power. Of course, it's a packed lineup this morning. Insights, analysis, and the conversations that matter. So, I'm going to advise you yet again. Grab your cup and settle in, and let's dive right into it.
Well, it is the first time you and I will be doing Breakfast Extra
together. Yeah, that's true.
So welcome home.
Thank you very much.
How do you feel being here?
Yeah, it feels good. It feels great. It feels. It reminds me of almost. It reminds me of the Watch Night event we did together, where we had to welcome Nigerians, basically, or the whole world into 2026.
It was a funny program, but quite interesting.
Yeah, very interesting one. But when we look at what happened over the week, I think if there's anyone I could say is my hero for the week, and now this is not me campaigning for this. Say, oh, is he a party member now?
Yeah.
But I think I give it up to the ADC for what they went through this week.
Right.
So they applied for, which I think is really sad in Nigeria if this is where we're going. They applied for Eagle Square. They were not given. They applied for National Stadium. They were not given. Even the velodrome that PDP used, they didn't have access to it. And of course, yes, the FCT minister says that's not true. They did not apply, or he didn't get it, or he didn't see it. Whatever the excuse is.
Something went missing.
Exactly. But I'm just thinking, if sometimes when you need to save your face, right, go the extra mile to just make you look like you're the good person.
Right.
I don't think it would have been a bad idea if WK, hearing everything everybody was saying, just said, you know what, okay, let's get them. Let me deliberately get them a good venue they can use just to vindicate this whole, thought that perhaps we're walking towards a one-party system.
We've always talked about this thing where I say Nigeria is in like a bad marriage because it looks like they don't care. It's like there's a petty fight. It's not being fair. It's more like the politics we're playing is so petty into the mud. It's crazy, and it's sad to see that these are the people who are supposed to, create laws for us, help us to get the best, tax laws or whatever law that they put in place, because we're always having so many people making decisions for Nigerians, and then if they're fighting so petty at that level, we don't have a say now. We really don't have a say.
It's really sad because you could see that eventually, when even the event happened or started, they cut out electricity. So eventually when they got a venue, they took out electricity in that place.
Yeah.
And you could literally see them fanning themselves with their hand fans and the likes all through the convention.
Well, I guess they're expressing Nigeria from the citizen point of view.
That's very true.
Well,
very true.
I think we should do the daily. So let's go on a short break. When we return, we'll do the dailies with you. Welcome back to Breakfast Extra Saturday edition. And of course, I'm with Chinwete Onyema, and we're going to be doing the dailies. And first, I will start with The Nation. Yes, right here at the center, it says ADC ticket. Kwankwasia, Mechi orders hit Atiku over security claims. Mark-led convention affront to court, say Bala and Abejide. Ex-VP's comment on Jonathan's rude former spokesman. You find that on page 4. Abujale, police summon Ijebode Kings makers over alleged bribery. FCCPC denies banning airtime borrowing. People are borrowing, I'm not paying, I suppose. Blames operator for service disruption. And airlines suspend proposed shutdown of flight operations, also on page 5. Saraki kicks over planned trial for culpable homicide. And Osun 2026, APC's cohesion boost, Oyebamiji's Gober bid. And right at the top, Tinubu signs 68.32 trillion naira 2026 budget, extends 2025 appropriation to June. This is what I was talking about. This is another budget. Well, we'll see what happens to it. Capital spends hit 50% as government targets infrastructure growth. Edun Gadoso inflation rate will drop to single digits despite headwinds. More time for banks that failed recapitalization deadline. Amazing headline.
It's quite interesting to see how the government was, quick to intervene with the airliners, threatening to either shut down, suspend operations, or increase airfares. And it's funny because these are the things we've been experiencing, right?
Yes.
For those who are using road transport, this happens every now and then. Once fuel price goes up, the next thing that happens is transportation fares go up as well. But then,
what other paper do we have, Chief?
the next one is Saturday Sun. Big one here says, State Police IGP under fire over 60-month take-off proposal. Ethnic nationalities, Northern Coalition, Afenifere Igbo groups, MBF, others reject plan. Coalition urges Tinubu to fast-track process with executive order. The far left corner, you see 2027, how APC, ADC, PDP conventions will shape party's fate. Benue abductions, my dark clothes helped me escape from kidnappers, says survivor. Oyo schools struggle despite 459 billion naira education budget in 10 years. Brazilian firm Petrobras teams up with Athol Aziz Oranto Petroleum in offshore oil block operations in Central Africa. At 102, I still do my morning exercise. Look at that. Madam Iyabode Ladipo. There's a side piece on here, of course, for those who are here looking to join or get into acting, what it takes to succeed in Nollywood. Mary John has all the nuggets for you, and that's it on Saturday Sun.
Interesting. Of course, let's move over to the Guardian weekend. Why Nigeria rejects fresh IMF bailout? Is it Nigeria that rejected it or the lawmakers? Our economic reform is on course, says federal government. Tinubu won't reverse reforms, Jimoh Ibrahim assures international stakeholders. Economy showed resilience in the first quarter despite shocks, says economist. And Tinubu signs 68.32 trillion naira 2026 budget and extends 2025 capital spending to June. Interesting, domestic airlines bow to pressure, shelve plans, flight suspension. Drug war, Mawa hails judiciary as NDLEA secures 974 convictions in 3 months. You know, when they talk about convictions, I wish we can actually see these things. Because I know that some people, when they say, oh, they've taken them to prison, we literally don't follow up. And at this point, it's very suspicious. That's what a lot of Nigerians are saying. It's very suspicious what they put on paper. How infrared drones advanced surveillance revolutionized Nigeria's anti-oil theft campaign. Interesting. Did you know about drones and advanced surveillances?
Where? The only drones I see are the ones they use in shooting content.
Wow.
That's the ones I see.
NSCDC rescues 18 pregnant women, 10 children from baby factory in Badagry. And that is one of our conversations today. I would really like to know exactly what is going on, because that is absurd. That is crazy. That is inhumane. And right at the top, first female professor, Simiat Jimo, unveils bold plan transforming waste to industrial wealth, and youth and danger of complacency, Project 2027. You find that on the back page. And finally, on The Guardian, Osun 2026, Oyebamiji's push to translate competence into votes. Chiwete.
The next one we're looking at is the Saturday Punch. The big headline here, 1,000 abducted Nigerians. Families beg as kidnappers go silent. We just want to hear their voices, says relatives. Kwara, Bornu, Niger, Kaduna, Zamfara, worst hit. Terrorists boast of converting victims to Islam. The top left corner of the Saturday Punch, you have it there, uncovered Lagos factory selling newborns for 1 million naira. Why military commanders are falling on front lines, 10 senior officers killed in 7 months. You can read up on that in Saturday Punch. Surviving domestic violence inspired my podcast, says actress Ayo Adesoya. A poison on the table, how poultry antibiotics are entering Nigerian diets. Lagos frees policemen who killed 6 traders over land. DCP Falana fumes. Mixed reactions after Tinubu signs 68.32 trillion naira 2026 budget. I was bathed with acid meant for my brother, says Anambra graduate. It's a sad one. Petrol prices to crash as Strait of Hormuz reopens. That's some cheery news we had yesterday, and I'm hoping it can reflect quickly as regards upon prices in Nigeria.
Horridly, it should, because the price is something else. Let's move to the Saturday Tribune, shall we? Troops intercept heavy weapons on Kaduna-Jos Highway. I would like to see some pictures, of these things. You find it on page 3. APC's ally declares ambition to be Oyo. APC's ally, beg your pardon, declares ambition to be Oyo State Governor. Okay. Elections are coming. PDP crisis. Turkey-led NWC writes INEC seeks de-recognition of Anyanwu as National Secretary, cites judgment affirming his expulsion from party. And Saraki PDP tackle Kwara government over offer robbery. Benue kidnapped victims narrate escape from abductors. Wow. NEC dissolved the NWC I-led in July 2025, Bala Nafiu left with us, says Umosu ADC founder. And right at the top, Walai, I made a mistake. I didn't have money, so I went to collect a bike with cutlass. Oyo police nab suspect less than 24 hours after snatching motorcycle. Balogun of Ibadan wants Olubadan in council members to stay off politics. Interesting. I think we have the weekend nest. You want to take that?
Have what?
Weekend trust.
I guess that's it. APC governorship tickets, imposition or consensus? That's a big question, a very huge one, based on the way things are looking right now. On the left corner, school resumption, fuel price hike pushes parents to tough choices. Tinubu extends 2025 budget to June 30, assents to 2026 bill. Nigerians battle with counterfeit medicines. On Benue attack, how abductors captured us. It's on page 28 of the Weekend Trust. Birth attendants, the struggle between affordability, survival. Interesting. These are the headlines, and of course, on the Weekend Trust.
Yes, I can see that most of the papers are carrying information about politics and just. It's, primaries and election is coming, you know, the whole internal fights and struggle, and everybody's just dragging everybody to court, which I'm so interested to find out what our lawmakers are doing with the power that we've given them, a whole 469 of them. But let's go on a short break. When we return, our first conversation starts right here in Breakfast Extra. Stay with us. Welcome back, and this is our first big story. Now, in any democracy, the legislature is a critical pillar responsible for lawmaking, representation, and oversight. But here in Nigeria, questions continue to arise about whether these responsibilities are truly being carried out in the interest of the people, from budget approvals to policy decisions and oversight of the executive. The impact of the legislature on national development cannot be overstated.
And yet, many Nigerians are increasingly concerned about the quality of representation, transparency in decision-making, and whether legislative actions align with the country's broader needs. So today, we're asking the critical questions. Are lawmakers truly representing the people? Is the legislature fulfilling its oversight role effectively? And how do these decisions shape Nigerians' development trajectory? To help us unpack these issues, we're joined by two experts. We have Ahmed Salihijo, a public sector development specialist with deep insight into governance and institutional performance. And also with us, we have Kunle Lawal, who's Executive Director of Electoral College Nigeria, who of course has extensive experience in electoral systems and democratic accountability. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you and good morning. Ahmed.
Good morning.
Let me start with you. How would you assess the performance of Nigeria's legislature in recent years in terms of lawmaking and representation?
Well, my assessment will be that it's fair, but certainly I feel it can be improved. You mentioned three very key aspects of the functions of the legislation, which is the lawmaking, representation, and oversight. So I think if you look at the three pillars, there are some that they have tried to do well, but I think they can certainly be improvement, especially when it comes to the representation. When you look at the budget cycle and the process that we go through during this budgeting cycle, I believe they can be improved representation of what the people actually need. The expectation from the legislators is that they keep a very, very close relationship with their constituents so that whatever comes within the budgeting cycle actually reflects what those constituents need. So, for instance, if you have areas within the community that are striving in agriculture or striving in small and medium businesses, you expect that budgeting cycle would reflect those kind of needs that they have. And then going through that entire cycle, you realize that when it comes to the National Assembly, we should be addressing those needs that the citizens have. But most of the legislators, probably concentrate more around the lawmaking, and sometimes that is disconnected to what is actually happening on ground. And with the oversight, the expectation is that once you design and get these bills ready, they should actually reflect what the citizens want. And with the oversight, you are actually, testing accountability from the executive side, and then especially when you have sustainability of projects and ensuring that the projects that have actually been put in place are serving the purpose that they need to serve. This is the kind of disconnect that I see, and I think there needs to be a better understanding of what the citizens actually need, and that actually fits into the budgeting cycle.
Now, Ahmed, you talked about mostly oversight. Now, we have over 469 people trying to make laws. And how is 469 people having oversight over the citizens? Would you say there's a bit of disconnect here, or do we need to reduce the people, or there's a lot of noise going through their ear for them not to see the major problem here?
Well, I believe that when we talk about the oversight, we are talking about the oversight of the projects that are being implemented, which is a function that happens between the legislative and the executive. However, when you speak about the representation, I understand your point around having 360 members of House of Representatives and 109 senators. But Nigeria is a very diverse country, and I do understand why sometimes it's very important to have a lot of representation, because along ethnic lines, there are very, very unique people that need to be represented ably. So where I'm pointing to is not the fact that there are a lot of legislators, but if each legislator is doing what he or she is supposed to do, I think the numbers would really, really not matter, because if they are in touch with their people and they understand what their people need, And when we come to plenary, they are communicating those exact needs, and they are using the oversight functions to ensure that the executive is held accountable for what they are supposed to do for their people. So I think the issue is not about the numbers, but I think the issue is about the quality of representation and understanding what your function is, either as a member House of Representatives or as a senator, especially when it has to do with the people. So most of the time, you have these plenary sessions, you follow the plenary sessions, and there's a lot of processes around lawmaking, but I don't see enough representation on what the people actually need and follow-ups with the executive to see if those needs are being met.
Let me come to you now, Mr. Kunle Lawal. Now, there's a growing perception that many legislative decisions actually do not reflect the needs of ordinary Nigerians. Do you agree with that? And if that's the case, what's driving this disconnect? Is it lack of empathy or lack of information by the lawmakers to actually know exactly what the people want?
Democracy. First of all, we need to understand that the foundation of the democracy generally is based on the legislature and not the executive. And I think this is where we miss it. Most people who run for or who campaign or who serve in the National Assembly or who serve within the legislature at all levels from local government to federal level don't actually interface fully as they're supposed to with the people they represent. Let's also understand that they're the only setup in a democracy that is required as or are nicknamed representative. So they are to participate, and their participation is based on representation. So the question is, how many times do they go back home to have these conversations? How many times do they have a town hall meeting that is within the system constantly? Now, this is a situation where you now find ourselves. When they're even campaigning, they usually campaign on executive functions and not on functions that are maybe oversight or amendments of laws. And I'd like to state here that most of the time, the problems with having laws in Nigeria is that we do not fully understand how to amend laws or make laws. Usually our laws are bogus. I'll give an example, like the PIB bill, 91 pages. It takes a long time to pass those laws. If you look at other countries, other democracies, Sweden, who I'd say has quite a great parliamentary process, laws are usually, or amendments are usually 2 or 3 lines, or usually, very simple. And I'll give an example, like when the NERC Act was going to be amended so that states could start to generate their own electricity without passing it through the national grid. All that needed to be changed was that the law was if you generated more than 1 megawatt, you have to pass it back to the national grid. All that was added there was another 0. So it means 10 megawatts, which changes the game entirely, meaning states can produce 10 megawatts without passing it through the national grid to be returned back. It means they can generate that amount of money. So I think legislature has been non-representative. I think that's the key thing. They performed more like they are part of the executive, which that only occurs in a parliamentary system of government like practiced in the UK.
All right, so oversight, of course, let's talk about oversight now because it's the key function of the legislature, right? Now, in your view, how effective has the National Assembly been in holding the executive accountable? Because that's also part of what they're supposed to do.
I think one of the major problems with Nigeria's democracy is the marriage between the executive and the legislative. We don't expect them to be at war. That's not the point, and that's not the point I'm making. But we expect for a full circle system, there should be a full oversight on the executive. Like I'll give an example. Why are we spending so much on foreign trips? Why are agencies not accountable? I'll give an example. Probably last elections, INEC spent close to $500 million, a little over $500 million. But what exactly did INEC account for? If I remember, in 2019, INEC promised they were going to get Alsatians for the elections. We're yet to see those Alsatians, whether as puppies, as grown dogs, or whatever. They even mentioned horses and etc. And now this oversight is not supposed to be conducted by CSOs or by activists or by people this oversight is supposed to be performed by the legislative. But the present marriage between the legislative and the executive does not allow for for a healthy democracy. It's more I don't want to use the word that's being used with rubber stamp, but it gets to a problem when we see a case where, as regards national security, the legislative acts a little bit like they don't know what's going on. They release statements like they are not part of the system. But when you want to change the national anthem, or you want to suspend the River State governor, which the president constitutionally does not have the power to do, but anyway, has happened. But you see that being passed in less than 24 hours. So it calls the question, who exactly is the legislative representing, the executive or the people? And therein lies the problem.
Well, Kunle, don't go anywhere because I'm sure we'll see those dogs in the next election. And Ahmed, please don't go anywhere. I have a question for you concerning budget. Let's go on a short break. When we return, this conversation continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. And right before the break, we were talking about a legislator and the people. And of course, we have Kunle and Ahmed with us. Before the break, Kunle talked about how things were being said, budgets were being, put in place, and we're expecting to see some sort of aid, like a bulldog, a boabul, a chow chow, German shepherd, all kinds of dogs to help us aid proper elections, but we're yet to see that. Now, let me ask you, Ahmed, of course, we've seen controversies around the budget insertions and constituency projects. Would you say these are tools for development, or have they become avenues for misuse, Ahmed?
It's a bit unfortunate because, as you rightly mentioned, those tools could be used better. So, in my experience, I believe a budgeting cycle should reflect both implementation and sustainability of projects. So in the first place, how do we bring these projects into the budget? As you rightly mentioned, they are constituency projects. But if you are going to have a constituency project, how are you designing that constituency project? Are you doing it solely based on your own interests, or are you doing it in the interest of the people? So sometimes what you realize is that when these projects are being nominated into the budget, the design is solely based on, okay, what is the cost of this project? When the project is also being executed, what kind of, returns are going to come from that particular project. However, in some instances, you can realize that with the same amount of money you're going to spend on that particular project, and you now, bring in a better project that is actually speaking to the needs of the people, you can spend the same amount of money, but you have a better impact. And another issue we have is that during implementation, we only worry about bringing the project to the ground. But when you come and visit that project 2-3 years down the line, what you realize is that the budgeting process has not taken care of the sustainability of the project. So today, for instance, you put a mini grid in a hospital. You concentrate on delivering that mini grid, but you have not also carried along, the staff of the hospital. You have not carried along the community to understand how they maintain those projects. And those key aspects are missing in the budgeting process. So the cost of the project is there, but the subsequent operation and maintenance is absolutely missing. And as Kunle mentioned, these are all aspects that we can look at when we're doing our laws. So what do I mean? When you design a project, you make sure that within the law, it also allows for sustainability of the project, proper ownership of the project. Who within the community is looking at that project on a yearly basis, on a monthly basis, to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing? Is it providing the amount of power it's supposed to be doing? Are there any repairs? All these things are all currently being ignored. So you look at the budget, there could be implementation, but visit that project 2-3 years down the line, and it's just not working. So this is one of the very, very critical issues I want to raise in this show today.
Let me come to you now, Kunle. I mean, based on Nigeria's constitution, you really cannot get into any political post right now without a political party. And what we've seen in recent times is a massive defection of lawmakers from one party, most of the opposition now, to the ruling party. I'd like to know, to what extent does political loyalty, or would I say party alignment now, affect the independence of lawmakers in Nigeria?
Well, I'd first like to state something about Nigeria. To understand the question you're asking, I'll need to paint a little picture. First and foremost, parties have their ideologies. We need to be clear on that. The common notion that parties don't have ideologies is not true. APC is a socialist party. Labour Party is socialist. They have more in common, that's APC and Labour, to its constitution than any other party. PDP is a capitalist party. I need to clarify that. So that is clarified. Now I need to say something. When you're running for office in Nigeria, parties do not sponsor candidates. Candidates build their own ideas. And when candidates build their own ideas, entice delegates, spend their own money, you don't expect them to get into a party and do what the party wants. So now back to your question, after we built this foundation. Regardless of what party they change, when you're sworn into office, you're sworn to protect the Constitution of Nigeria and you're sworn to represent the people of Nigeria, regardless of party. Now, the change of parties and party non-loyalty, except it has been put in our laws, remains free for everybody. It's totally not, or nobody's under pressure. People can change parties and it's not criminal. But here's the conversation. In the House, I'm more concerned about ideas that are being put forward. I'm more concerned about bills. You have people that are representing, or people in National Assembly who people do not even question because they could sit down in the House 4 years. I know somebody who sat down in the House 16 years. His average allowance, or her average allowance, because there are two, he and a she. Both average allowances over that 16 years is approximately 1 billion naira. And they proposed two bills, didn't make any law, as in non-passed entirely. And we don't ask those questions. We're more concerned with discussing who has moved to APC, who has moved to LP, who has moved to ADC, who has moved to NMPP. And those are not the conversations. The conversations are, how well has my representative represented me in the House? How have they brought our problems to the fore of what is called a national conference, which could change the laws of the entire country? For me, those are the conversations we should be having, not party defections. For me, those are just, how would I put it? No, I don't want to say we're in a circus to enjoy the dance of the clowns, but let's just put it, we're watching a show. So if we're paying attention to, things that don't matter, then we would end up still in the same place. I think we should ask the real questions, which are, what bill has my senator or my House of Rep brought to the ground? What bill has my State House of Assembly brought to the ground? What bill has my councillor? And the councillors are the National Assembly of the local government, and most Nigerians don't even know that. So, these are the conversations. But if we entertain ourselves with the charade, the decorations of the entire process, which is moving of parties and whatever, we lose the fact that we might not be concentrating on governance. And like Ahmad said, the necessary things like sustainability of projects are now lost in that conversation when we're arguing 50 people have moved to the APC, 30 people have moved to the ADC, which are totally irrelevant conversations.
So I just want to ask you, why do you think we have these, what you claim, irrelevant conversations? So why do you think we're distracted with things like that as opposed to asking the right questions if those who are representing us are doing a good job? Because it looks like most of the time we're focused majorly on the president, saying, oh, the president didn't do this, the government didn't do that, forgetting that we have lawmakers who are representing us in the National Assembly who should be fighting our fight, but are not doing that. Is it a case of the people are not aware, or they just do not care, or do not even believe in the legislative system?
There's a strong saying that a democracy is only as strong as the people that know its laws. So the Electoral College puts political illiteracy in Nigeria at about 82 to 85% as of now. 82 to 85%. So if people in office, which we say, and we put people in office who even understand jurisdictions of their office, we put them at 63% of people in office that do not understand what the jurisdictions of their office are, then you have a quagmire. You don't expect a situation where people are 82% politically illiterate to produce it would understand governance or be able to hold those in governance accountable. And it goes down even to, I'm sorry, but I have to mention this, but it goes down to even, sometimes our media, I can tell you Nigerian media and, sorry, no offense, News Central.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Nigerian media can't even differentiate between an aspirant and a candidate before we even start the bigger conversations. And, when you hear these conversations, it's really hurtful because it doesn't transcend the kind of education that we expect in a democracy. What actually is happening is that there's so much political illiteracy that we cannot even hold people accountable. And when we can't hold people accountable, those in office are free to do as they please.
Well, Ahmed, Kule, thank you for that input. But Ahmed, the question now is, you had mentioned earlier how you think it's best that the legislature, they should go back to the people and find out what the people need than just, forget about the reason why they are there. Now, apart from them just being there, what is the reminder that they need? What is the thing that, citizens need to do to remind them that, see, you're standing in for us. You're supposed to be fighting for us and not just sitting there and not understanding what we need to do. So what does the citizen need to do to strengthen the legislative accountability beyond just voting them in and then hoping that something will happen?
Well, I think the main basis for that is what Kule mentioned. A lot of these electorates do not even understand what their rights are, so they don't understand the role they play in actually choosing the people who lead them. So in essence, if you don't know something, it's difficult for you to even hold the person accountable, because the foundation of that legislator even coming onto that seat is missing, because the electorate doesn't understand the right he has or she has over that legislator. So that is the fundamental issue. As Kule mentioned, over 80% political illiteracy. So the process in its entirety needs to be improved, where the voters understand why they are actually voting for these people to bring them into the Senate or into the House of Representatives. These days, a lot of things happen during the electioneering process where, those values are being lost, either through reasons of poverty, either through reasons of having particular interests. So people are, choosing leaders not based on who they want to hold accountable, but they are choosing leaders based on, their immediate needs, because they know fully well that within a political cycle, once you choose a leader, after he gets his ticket, after he gets elected, what usually happens is that they don't return home, till another 4 years, and you see that happening constantly. So these electorates now look at it as an opportunity to gain on the short term, so in the few months that they're around campaigning, they look to see, how could they benefit from that short time, knowing fully well that after another 3 years, they might not see them, they might not have that kind of representation. So the entire foundation needs to be improved, where, electorates understand that the reason why they are voting them in is so that they can work for the people, not just go into the National Assembly, facilitate 1 or 2 projects from 1 or 2 agencies. They need to understand that they own that entire process, and as a group, they need to be holding that particular legislator accountable for their time when they are saying in the National Assembly. So the good work Electoral College is doing through the leadership of Kule, I think would improve that kind of, knowledge, so that citizens are actually aware of why they are actually voting, legislators into the National Assembly.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, Ahmed Salahijo and Kunle Lawal, for sharing your perspectives. We appreciate you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Well, that was a good conversation.
Of course it was. Very interesting one.
Well, hopefully Nigerians will remember to vote. Let's go on a quick break. When we return, we have the news in the hour. Stay with us. Welcome back to Breakfast Extra, and this is the news within the hour. My name is Queen Celestine. The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board has released the first batch of results for the 2026 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination. JAM says 632,788 candidates who sat for the exam on Thursday can now check their scores via SMS using registered phone numbers. The board notes that result printing is not yet available as the exercise is still ongoing with more batches expected. It also issued a strong warning against result falsification, describing it as a criminal offense. According to the board, 2 candidates and 1 parent are already in custody for manipulating results using AI and electronic means. JAM urges candidates to use only official channels and uphold integrity throughout the admission process. And meanwhile, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board says candidates unable to seat the 2026 UTME due to disruptions will be rescheduled. The assurance was given during oversight by the Senate Committee on Tertiary Education in Abuja. The board spokesperson stated that all affected candidates would be given another opportunity with provisions for further rescheduling where necessary. Authorities said the process aims to ensure no registered candidate is excluded. Deeper into insecurity now, the Benue State Police Command says 5 passengers abducted along the Makodi-Otukpo Road have been rescued following ongoing operations. The victims, some of whom were students traveling to sit for the ongoing JAM examination, were attacked while on a commercial bus on Wednesday night. The Commissioner of Police confirmed that 18 persons were in the vehicle at the time of the attack, including the driver. He added that several passengers were taken into captivity during the incident. Authorities say 13 victims remain in captivity as security teams continue search efforts in the area. And staying with security, the federal government has announced plans to reintegrate 744 former terrorists and victims of violent extremism into society after completing a de-radicalization program. The beneficiaries graduated under Operation Safe Corridor, a national initiative targeting rehabilitation. Officials said the program focuses on low-risk individuals who surrendered, providing psychological support, vocational training, and civic reorientation before release. A breakdown shows most participants are from the Northeast, particularly Benue and Yobe State, reflecting the region's exposure to insurgency, while smaller numbers were drawn from other states across the country. The federal government says 25 of the 65 ambassadors designated nominated by Bola Tinubu has received approval from host countries. Foreign Affairs spokesperson Kimiebi Ebinefa says the approvals, known as agreement, signal progress in filling Nigeria's global diplomatic positions. A 3-day induction program beginning April 27 will prepare envoys for their roles before posting commence. The government insists all nominees will be assigned. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has warned against individuals falsely claiming ambassadorial titles, describing the act as illegal and fraudulent.
That individuals parading themselves as ambassadors based on such deceitful conferments are engaging in impersonation, which is a criminal offense, and therefore strongly cautions all persons involved in such illegalities or parading themselves as ambassadors to desist forthwith. The ministry is working with relevant security agencies, the Nigerian Immigration Service, the Federal Road Safety Corps, and the Vehicle Inspection Office, and other relevant other stakeholders to ensure that any individual or group found engaging in the usurpation of or fraudulent conferment of ambassadorial titles and issuance of fake and unauthorized diplomatic vehicle plate numbers are prosecuted in line with the law.
To election matters now, the Independent National Electoral Commission has urged politicians to adopt mediation and alternative dispute resolution methods instead of relying solely on courts ahead of the 2027 elections. Speaking in Abuja, the Commission's Director of Litigation and Prosecution, Sulaima Ibrahim, said electoral disputes ranging from fraud claims to contested results can escalate into violence if poorly managed. He noted that mediation is increasingly proving effective, with over 20 cases already resolved through INEC's ADR framework. Ibrahim cited past successes, including resolving disputes within the Labour Party, and referenced the 2007-2008 Kenya post-election crisis as a case where mediation prevented further bloodshed and restored stability. Uncertainty deepens in the Middle East as the United States signals it may sustain pressure on Iran despite ongoing ceasefire efforts. Donald Trump says Washington will maintain a blockade on Iranian ports if no agreement is reached with Iran, adding he may not extend the ceasefire set to expire on Wednesday. Iran has reopened the Strait of Hormuz following a ceasefire linked to Israel and Lebanon, but warns it could shut the route again if the blockade continues. Key disagreements persist, particularly over Iran's uranium stockpile. Global markets remain on edge as tensions strengthen a critical oil transit route. And that's all the news at this hour. Let's go on a break and get back to Breakfast Extra. Stay with us.
Welcome back, still Breakfast Extra. We're on to our second big story. Now, the African Democratic Congress, the ADC, has just concluded a controversial national convention in Abuja, one that has not only reshaped the party's structure, but also deepened internal divisions. That's right. Now, from sweeping constitutional amendments to the dissolution of previous leadership structures, the convention has raised serious questions about legitimacy, internal democracy, and the future of the party ahead of 2027. Our delegates at the convention overwhelmingly approved key changes, including amendments to the party's constitution and the ratification of a new leadership under David Mark.
But perhaps more controversially, several high-profile members were expelled over alleged anti-party activities. And this is all happening against the backdrop of an ongoing leadership crisis within the party, with multiple factions laying claim to its structure and even legal battles challenging the legitimacy of the current leadership. There are also concerns about the role of the Independent National Electoral Commission after the electoral body declined to monitor the convention following a court ruling. Yet the party proceeded regardless. So what does all of this mean for internal party democracy, political stability, and the road to 2027? Joining us to discuss this is George Ashiro, Chairman, African Democratic Congress, Lagos Chapter. Mr. Ashiro, welcome and thank you for joining us this early Saturday. But let me start with the legitimacy question. How would you respond to concerns about the credibility of the convention, especially given that the INEC was not present?
Well, the convention has been held. It was held successfully. It had overwhelming numbers of participants from across the country. It was so successful in terms of attendance and participation that quite a lot of us even had security fears in terms of the crowds and managing the crowds and getting into the venues. That's on top of the fact that the apparatus of government tried to make sure that that event did not hold. Now, when you talk about legality, first and foremost, this is a registered political party that has over 4 million registered members and growing. And so you do not and you cannot, on the basis of some kind of litigation about the leadership of that party, prevent party's activities. So INEC, would have an opinion as to whether or not they want to participate, but that does not inviolate that, the capacity of members of the party who are legitimately able to have their annual general meeting called the convention to hold. So there is nowhere that we have violated any form of law. There is no specific litigation that says the Congress should not have held as at the time we wrote to INEC. And then every other activity that's gone on since then, in our opinion, just pure politics, just an attempt to make sure that we're not able to have that convention. But we have had it. We needed to have it because there are timelines for these things to happen in an election year. And so that's where we are. And then when the Supreme Court makes a judgment, it will simply be that we've already done it, rather than be under pressure to do it when we are already in the primary season.
Mr. Ashiru, let's talk about constitutional amendments. Now, the convention produced a major constitutional amendment. Can you walk us through the most significant and why it's important at this time?
I think the most critical thing that everyone obviously wants to make reference to is the fact that anyone who joins the party instantly and fulfills all the requirements to join the party, validating the membership at the ward level, is automatically qualified to participate in any aspect of the party's activities, including elections. You know, prior to that, you had to have been a member of the party with evidence of being a fee-paying member for about 2 years before you could participate in certain elections. You could participate, for example, in House of Reps and Senate and everything, and party elections themselves. So this is the key change that made it possible for the coalition to work. And then, of course, there were changes to the structure of the party in terms of the types of positions that we have and the spread of those positions and the numbers of those positions. So the former structure and the new structure is more lean and more efficient. Every other change, there are minor changes to make the party run more smoothly and efficiently. But those are two and critical to the structure of the party, ability to contest elections.
Right. Mr. Ashiru, several members were expelled over, of course, alleged anti-party activities, and critics are saying this looks more like a political purge than discipline, of course, with the whole situation that's happened over the past few months. Do you agree or you disagree?
Well, the expulsion was based on members of the party who had done a press conference stating that they had taken over the leadership of the party and essentially declared themselves the new leaders of the party. So that's anti-party. The moment a few people got and they're not able to bring forth the required majority, and then they declare themselves to be the interim chairman, interim secretaries of the party, they have violated due process. And I think that's basically what the party made reference to. And usually when you have that level of intrusion into the party's affairs, where you become, in effect, another faction of the party, then clearly the party will then have to do what it needs to do, which is to install discipline. And that discipline usually comes by saying you have essentially made yourself a different party altogether. And that's what I believe happened. It had nothing to do with my opinion. That's just facts.
So it looks like, of course, there is a faction within the ADC. Can you confirm that at this point? Because some people claim that they do not know the other side. Another person on the other side says, I don't know the other side. So what's your take on that? Is there a faction in the ADC right now?
There is only one ADC and there's only one national chairman, Senator Deepens. So you might challenge his position on a one-on-one basis. That doesn't automatically make you a faction. Because for you to be a legitimate faction, you'd have to have members in 36 states. You'd have to have a digital register. You'd have to have had a NEC meeting that made you a national chairman. And all of this doesn't exist. What we have is an individual fighting for himself to be regarded and recognized as a national chairman, even without the ratification of any other person in the party. So how that becomes equivalent to an organization that has millions of members and that had a NEC meeting in July 29 and that ratified the leadership of Senator David Mark and the secretaryship of Benue Rauf Aregbesola, how one person having meetings, a couple of people here and there, equates a faction. I will never be able to understand that. A true faction of a party would be if the party has a complete national executive council or committee with members in 36 states, can show you their membership register, can show you that they have millions of members, then you could then say you have potentially two factions. So we don't have that. And we don't have people that are in the party that are members of this or that group. We have people who are identified with them, but you can be sure many of them are not necessarily members of this party. So we don't equate that to be a faction. And I think that's also one of the reasons why we have a problem with Professor Amubiton's decision to recognize an individual litigant to the equivalent of a party. That's where we really believe that it was done intentionally to bring some level of crisis, and probably also promoted by the ruling party.
Right. Mr. Shiru, we've seen the ADC go through ups and downs, and you still went ahead with the convention despite legal and institutional concerns. And of course, we're close to elections, and we've seen a lot of defections because people are trying to choose who they believe or what mandate they are standing on. Now, if the situation where the convention has happened despite, the legal concerns, do you think that this is risking undermining democratic norms within the party itself?
No, the party did exactly what it's supposed to do. The party announced congresses long before INEC made a pronouncement concerning the veracity of its leadership. The party is not a person. The party is a group of people. As long as this party is recognized by INEC, registered as INEC, then it cannot have a leadership vacuum. It must. So when the chairman of INEC made a pronouncement that he was not going to recognize a leadership, it's essentially telling us that he's leaving the party leadership leaderless, and that is not possible. An organization needs to have a form of leadership, and that was his own personal interpretation on appellate court judgment, which essentially was a ruling saying that we're not going to make a pronouncement on this matter, so we're going to continue recognizing the existing status quo. Now, all you have to ask is, at the point at which the court made that pronouncement, what was the status quo? The status quo was David Mark from July 19. So, 29 rather, of 2025. So we already believe that we have the legitimacy to carry on our activities. Congresses were called long before this appellate court issue was raised, before INEC decided to interject into the matter, and the INEC was adequately informed, and we also informed INEC in Lagos appropriately. So those congresses will have to carry on because they are internal party affairs, and then the convention is also an internal party affair. So when we now get to the point where the court makes a final pronouncement concerning leadership, the party has to carry on with its activities. Because not carrying on with activities essentially means that you've killed democracy in Nigeria. That's worse than, what you're making reference to, that we're talking about internal democracy. This is internal democracy at work. It's the people's will in the party, membership of the party, carrying on with their activities.
Let's talk about internal democracy. There seems to be, of course, an internal crisis within the ADC. But I just want to know what this means for Nigerians, especially those of them who are looking to the ADC as a credible, alternative ahead of the 2027 elections?
Well, what we're doing is what Nigerians have done in the days of the military. Whether it was regarded as acceptable or not acceptable, Nigerians went out there, protested, Nigerians went out there and did what they believe was right for the people of Nigeria. ADC is doing what it believes is right. We cannot have a one-party system in Nigeria. We cannot have just one single party presenting a candidate in the next election. That will be the biggest disservice to the efforts of those who died fighting for Nigeria's democracy. Nigeria needs to have a very strong democracy, meaning that for every ruling party, there must be strong opposition. And so that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the right to give the people the choice and the chance to choose who their leaders should be. So this is the real moral and ethical principle behind what we're talking about. Of course, people are going to use the courts, just like they tried to decimate the PDP, tried to decimate the Labour Party, and now ADC has risen, and we're seeing the same exact tactic being used. And it's being used everywhere, even in states. People that have been funded and sent to go and destabilize this party. These were people that were not available 2 years ago. They were not looking at ADC. There was no crisis. There was nobody coming to say so. And so INEC was absolutely together with ADC. Then suddenly, because we became incredible threats, all of a sudden, everything is wrong with ADC. No, the people understand that. The average Nigerian understands this. This is like deja vu. We've been through this before. This reminds me of Akro and Zeribe's lawsuit, which Babangida used as a basis for cancelling the Nigeria 3 election. It was frivolous, it was spurious, it was insidious, yet it was what the then president needed as a basis for saying, okay, I have to cancel that election, which was the freest and fairest election Nigeria ever had. And this is exactly the same kind of playbook. Somebody will go to court on frivolous and spurious and insidious purpose, and then next thing you know, it stabilize an organization to make sure there's no opposition to the government in power. This is not what we fought for, and Nigerian people will not take it. We will not take it lying down.
Mr. Ashiru, to be honest, it's very close to elections, and of course Nigerians are wondering, where do we go, who do we vote for? We've seen conversations of Nigeria being a one-state party. We've seen where the APC say we're all together, we're united, there is no problem. PDP is having their own internal crisis and sorting it out, and then there's the ADC, and we have a lot of heavyweights in the ADC. And we talked about earlier people who are in the ADC claiming there is a factions. Like you said, allegedly there are no factions, there's just the David Mack factions. We're very close to election. How do Nigerians come to a point to say that we are going to trust ADC? What is ADC doing to address transparency? What is ADC doing to make sure that these conversations hovering around factions stop, so that we know clearly that this is the person who's in charge and this is the person we're following?
We're doing exactly what you are asking. By holding congresses shows that we are in charge. Which other faction is holding a congress as we speak? By holding a convention also shows that we are doing what we need to do for Nigerians. Which other faction is holding a convention? And if they're doing a convention, did they write to INEC? Did they fulfill the minimum electoral act requirement of having the members register submitted to INEC? Do they have the people in the 36 states who will participate, who are known to be registered members of the party, not hired crowds? This is what we're saying. We're already doing what we should do. And that's why I'm saying that the only way you can say a faction exists is if you look around you and you see the faction. But there is no faction. You can't see any evidence of anybody doing anything other than having meetings in hotel rooms. That's not equivalent of a faction. So what we don't want is to be distracted from our goal, our vision. Our mission is to bring out a credible alternative for Nigerians to vote for. And if for any reason, either because or INEC or anybody begins to take away the rights from Nigerians, you will see the greatest sit down in the history of Nigerian elections, which means Nigerians will simply not vote. You are going to have anybody winning that election without ADC. It will be 5% voter turnout. 5% voter turnout. So I think we need to be aware that that is a greater threat to democracy than ADC not being on the ballot. ADC being on the ballot is the best bet for ensuring that the whole world sees that we're practicing true democracy and that our people are given options and choices. And that's basically why we have to keep doing what we're doing. And we'll keep doing it until the Supreme Court tells us we're not doing the right thing. But I believe the Nigerian people, the moral principle of the rights of association, the right to vote, the right to participate in the electoral process is going to make us scale through all this.
Well, let me bring your attention to what an ADC chieftain and House of Reps member, Leke Abejide, said. He described the convention that happened on the 14th of April 2026 at an event center in Abuja. He actually described it as a Suya convention. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the unfortunate part of it is that Honorable Abejide was known and has been known to be a direct beneficiary of the government in power, has constantly promoted the government in power, has constantly even campaigned for the government in power while he's in opposition. So the party, on the basis of that, already saw that this as anti-party for which he was expelled. So his opinion no longer matters to the extent that he has been seen to be promoting the ruling party, participating in promoting the agenda of the ruling party, and publicly, very publicly, making it clear that he supports the ruling party in everything they're doing. How that helps us in ADC, I don't know. So the party took the right decision by excusing him so that he can join the ruling party and be a part of them rather than be part of us and be a mole.
Well, Mr. George Ashiru, thank you so much for joining us and, of course, giving us clarity as to this situation. I wanted to ask you one more question, but I think I will wait for the next time we have another ADC conversation. Do thank you and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Clearly, the developments within the African Democratic Congress raise important questions about internal democracy, party leadership, and the broader implications for Nigeria's political landscape ahead of 2027. And these issues continue to unfold. Many will be watching closely to see whether the party can resolve its internal divisions and present a united front. And that is it on this segment. Stay tuned for more. Let's go on a quick break. And now our first big report for today. A disturbing discovery in Lagos is once again shining a light on a deeply troubling criminal network, the operation of so-called baby factories. Operatives of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps have uncovered a suspected baby factory in Badagry, rescuing 28 victims, including pregnant women and children, and arresting key suspects. Yes, and the details are as alarming as they are heartbreaking. Authorities say the victims, mostly young women, were allegedly lured with financial inducements, made to sign agreements, and in some cases had their freedom restricted within the facility. Investigations also suggest that these operations may be linked to online recruitment channels, with suspects reportedly using social media platforms to target vulnerable women. And beyond the criminality, this raises serious concerns about poverty, exploitation, and the trafficking of children.
Because this is not an isolated case, over the years, similar operations have been uncovered across different parts of Nigeria, pointing to a wider, more complex network that thrives on desperation and weak enforcement systems. We have a report on this from our correspondent, Israel Eferubo. Take a look.
Operatives of the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, Lagos State Command, have dismantled a suspected baby factory, arresting several suspects and parading them alongside rescued victims. Authorities say the discovery highlights growing concerns over human trafficking and illegal child trade network in the state.
We are here to parade victims and suspects of a baby factory in Badagry area. About 3 weeks ago, we had an actionable intelligence that a baby factory is in operation around this area. 18 victims and 2 suspects. Out of the 18 victims, 17 of them are fully pregnant. One of them had miscarriage. Otherwise, they would have been 18 pregnant victims.
The suspect admitted to playing different roles in the operation during interrogation.
We came to this Badagry January this year. We came to find a bigger apartment. We are adopting children to those that don't have children.
She came across the group and saw that when you refer someone, you will get a commission. So that was how she referred someone, that someone posted, "I'm pregnant, I want to give it out." Then she will charge the person, "Okay, I have someone that can take care of you," and then you get compensated after giving birth. So she will refer that person, and then that person will now compensate her with, we now give her commission, like 50,000 or so for her. So that was how she started it. No, we didn't sold anybody because, they came at an early stage. They haven't due to deliver yet.
One of the rescued victims, speaking emotionally, expressed deep regret over her involvement.
I did not mean to do this, but when I found out that I'm pregnant, I asked a friend of mine to tell me if she has any drugs that I can be able to abort the pregnancy. So a friend of mine told me that he has someone that she can take me to. That is where I found myself here. They say that as I cannot be able to take care of the child, that after giving birth, they will give the child to someone that can take care of the child, like people that doesn't have children. I feel so bad and so ashamed of myself. The person that put me in pregnancy rejected it. And besides that, the person is late.
Yeah, we are taking the suspect and the victims for proper care. We already contacted the NAPTIP and one of the state authorities so that the medical care of the victims and some other care for them can be adequately attended to. Then investigation is still continuing. And once we conclude our investigation, then the suspect will be charged to court.
Authorities say the victims will receive necessary support, while those responsible will be prosecuted as the NSCDC intensifies efforts to curb human trafficking in the state. In Lagos, for News Central, Israel Eferubo.
Quite disturbing realities there, but beyond the arrest, the bigger question, of course, remains how do these operations continue to exist and what more needs to be done to stop them? Joining us now is SC Oluwaseun Abolorin, who's the Public Relations Officer, NSCDC Lagos Chapter Command. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us live in the studio.
Thanks so much.
Good morning, Mr. Badagry. I saw you at the video and I was about to say, ha! But my first question is, just run us through this operation itself. What exactly did your team uncover when you got there?
Oh, it's a whole lot. You know, a lot of desperate people in the guise for chasing illicit money in these days. And the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, being a very proactive paramilitary agency of government, particularly the Lagos State Command, under the able leadership of our dear State Commandant, Mr. Adedotun Sunday Keshiro, has always put his eyes on the ball to ensure that we arrest all forms of crimes and criminalities, you know, that's maybe permitting our enclaves, nooks and crannies of Lagos State. For example, like the story that we just saw in Badagry, particularly the Okuju, Elado.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Badagry, but we'll have to take a pause now on this conversation. We'll go on a quick break. When we return, the conversation definitely continues. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Of course, we're still having the conversation as regards the baby factory that was uncovered just days ago. And we still have with us the NSCDC Lagos Chapter Command Public Relations Officer, Mr. Oluwaseun Aboluwari. And of course, just like Queen asked you before we went on that break, you're going to tell us exactly what your team uncovered in Badagry and, you know, how was the network operating?
Okay, so I'm Oluwaseun Aboluwari, not Aboluwari. Okay. Yeah, talking about the Badagry operations or raids, as it were, the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps Lagos State Command, under the able leadership of Mr. Adedotun Sunday Keshiro, upon receiving a very strong, formidable, and credible, actionable alert from our operatives in the Badagry Divisional Office about a baby factory found around Okuju, Ilado, Zone 1 area of Olorunda, around Aradagun in Badagry, quickly swung into action in line with the commandant's directive. You know, first, one of the things that we often do is to mount heavy surveillance to ensure that we can match the information that we have with activities being perpetrated. Also, we also mapped the environment to ensure that we gather intelligence around movements and to ensure that these unscrupulous elements that we have their information, we can also match that information with the activities that are being perpetrated in that area. Not only that, the Badagry Division also went ahead, especially with the role that the division officer played in ensuring that he monitors the Facebook accounts that these unsuspecting victims are often recruited by, where they are lured, deceived into the act. Maybe when they now get to the house, then they can now begin to tell them some other things. So all of these were the underground intelligence that were gathered, followed, and they went as far as about, you can imagine, about 3 weeks. So it wasn't something we just heard and we just went to bust. We took our time, we gathered credible and actionable intelligence, we mapped the environment, and we also had engagement, because community engagement is one of the key factors that would always help any security agency to have a successful operation. And these are some of the elements that made our raids in Badagry to be very successful, as you have it today. Right. And when this information was well monitored, our men smashed the baby factory and we found suspects, we found victims. Suspects are 2. The suspects are also, give or take, couple. I'm sure they are in close relationship, a male and a female, well grown up. We also found 28 victims. About 18 were confirmed pregnant by evidence. We are not medical doctors, so ascertain that, but by evidence you see that they are heavily pregnant. And they are between the ages of 18 to 35 thereabouts, so they are informed minds. But you know, via deception and luring, anything could happen, especially in the guys for looking for money or something, or how to take care of their babies and all of that. So you also have infants, you have children, and one of the things we also found out is that when they are lured into the place, okay, they have promises from those who are coordinating that. I'm talking about the couple now, on the fact that they'll take care of their welfare, ensure that they take care of the pregnancy until postnatal, when the baby is eventually delivered. They also go on to do negotiation of how they sell their babies to maybe quote unquote customers who may want to purchase the babies.
So we see that this is not the first time this is happening. Can you talk to us as to how rampant are these baby factories within Lagos and Nigeria?
Well, I would even like to go beyond Lagos and Nigeria, because you must talk about facts.
Right.
So if you check the registered or documented facts about baby factory tailored back to 2006 in Nigeria, according to UNESCO, though there might be other facts, but I think that's documented in 2006. And between 2006 and now, you see here of baby factory. And that's why the commandant said in his address to newsmen that a Lagos that is well policed by several security agencies, federal, state, and local, is uncalled for to still hear in this time and age that there are still places where baby factories are being coordinated. So globally too, it's not only known to Nigeria. Nigeria is not an exception either. You've heard of baby factory cases in Thailand, where you have a baby factory codenamed Baby 101, being smashed by the Thailand cop or Thailand police. You also have in Malaysia, Guatemala, Kenya. And coming back to Nigeria, there are several states where baby factories have been discovered. And that brings us to the point of why is this still in operation? It means that there's issue of economic factor. People looking for money by all crooked means, by trying to see how they can better their lives and all of that. Then you can also see it as a social menace, okay, when behavioralism, ethical behaviors are neglected, okay, vices, stigma issues, okay, people feel that, this pregnancy is unwanted, and I'm just looking for how to get rid of it. And someone say, don't get rid of it. Bring it to the baby factory. We can manage it until the baby is produced or delivered. Then you get something in return. You can see the story of that young girl. She was lured. She was deceived. She was saying that by herself, confessional statement. She was lured, and today is a shame. She's even ashamed of herself. That's how much these people don't want to get into it. It shows clearly that someone somewhere is deceiving them.
Right.
So we understand that the victims, of course, they were recruited via social media, of course, and also the promises of, financial gains. Yeah. But how sophisticated are these guys when it comes to how they operate?
Basically, you discover that social media is a rampant thing in this age. It has even taken a ride of with its advent of the fifth columnist. Okay, and social media is not something that is too hard for people to come by.
Access.
So a lot of people have access to it, not because you have to have one serious education or not. So they are not as sophisticated as that. It's just the factors that warrant these people to be lured into it. For example, an unwed young girl that is talked to that you can get money with this instead of you getting rid of it may probably, okay, like, as you have seen, follow that advice and say, let me just hide my face for the meantime. People will know where I went to, and I have this baby, I get money. But they didn't know that one day the security agencies such as ours will smash their factory. And that's one of the things that we have always said. The commandants continue to say it, that all these unrepentant, desperate people for money should please desist from these acts, because when we get them, we'll definitely prosecute them. We'll definitely prosecute them and ensure that they are convicted if they are found culpable.
Right. So this baby factory, I wanted to ask, according to the report, they were evident 18 girls or ladies that were pregnant, but one had a miscarriage at 17. They were lured through social media and, you know, we have money for you. But after they give birth, do they remain there to continue giving birth, like multiple, or they get there and something just happened, or after they give birth, they go and they just keep recruiting new people, or they just tie them down because, you know, based on what we heard, the facility, some of them can go out. Are they tied there to just keep giving birth multiple times, or after they give birth, they can go? What is the whole operation like?
Yes, you know that it's a fresh story, and investigation is still going on to actually ascertain some of the nitty-gritty of how these people also operate. However, one of the things that we have also found and observed is that someone who is promised payment after delivery, you know, that means there is a black market there because it's illicit. So until such transaction is sorted before they will take their exit. That's why you can find very gory pictures of infants. It shows that negotiation is still going on. They are still waiting for customers. So these are clear activities that doesn't need anything to be eaten.
Now, to what extent does the present economical hardship, of course, in Nigeria now, and also the fact that there's also stigma for unwanted pregnancy. We saw from that lady who said, I mean, she got pregnant, the person who impregnated her denied her. Now it's even late. And we know what the society, how society can be harsh when it comes to women who get pregnant out of wedlock. Some of them literally stop their life, basically. No school, nothing keeps moving for them. So how much do these factors affect businesses like this?
One thing I must just say, if I take it from where you started the question from, economic hardship, I think the matter about economic hardship is international. Hardships are being, even in the great powers, United States of America, they've gone through Great Depression, okay? So for economic hardship, life is about choices. There's no reason for you to take crime and criminality, you know, as a bias for economic hardship, or for social challenges, or for personal challenges that you have. All over the world, this is a global village. You've seen people without arms, without legs, without limbs, that are also great people, great influencers. Our lives too have gone through one or two other challenges, but we've remained resolute to ensure that we go through school, we graduate, we pursue our lives and destinies, and ensure that we come out good with whatever we're doing. So we are telling the Nigerian Security and Defense Corps, Lagos State Command, is telling whoever that is into this kind of business, that is not a business to do. Like the commandant said yesterday, he said it is inhumanity to man. It is highly condemnable. The NSCDC Lagos State Command condemns it totally. It's not a way to go for anyone, even for the victims. The state commander addressed them, spoke to their psychology, to their psyche, to let them know that you can be better regardless of your present situation. Stigmatization is self-inflicted. If you remove that from your mind and say, oh, I don't want this thing has happened because you took it by choice. For example, the lady who said the person that impregnated her rejected the baby. Don't reject yourself because nobody forced you there, okay, to have illicit sex. And when the outcome came, you take another choice. The choice you're even taking now is even worse. So we are actually telling them and preaching to them, evangelizing to them that don't take choices that you know that when you are caught, you have yourselves to blame. For example, the government to take care of them. We have taken the victims to NAPTIP because we work in synergy with other security agencies and other relevant stakeholders of government. And NAPTIP is actually dealing with this now in Lagos State. And you know, the commandant has said also that prosecution will take place. The suspects will be followed up to ensure that they are prosecuted. And if they are culpable, they'll be brought to book, sure.
Right. Now, let's talk about the social media through which these people find solace, to want to run, to go and look for money. Oh, if I drop my baby here, I'll get money. What is the court doing to find those people? How are we going to get them and bring them to justice?
Oh, yes, beautiful. One thing you must also let us realize is that the security agencies are not spirits, we are not ghosts. we get information from maybe crime witnesses or well-meaning Nigerians, good people in the society. So for these particular operations that were successful, we like to say a very big thank you from the NSCDC Lagos State Command on behalf of our dear State Commandant and the entire team in Lagos State. We like to say a very big thank you to the Badagry community people for alerting the NSCDC, for believing in us, for entrusting us with such a very vital information that will rescue these victims. Some of them can still become very great people in life, great business people in life. For trailing of these kind of unscrupulous elements on the social media, we continue to work with media organizations, we continue to work with community people, we continue to work with relevant stakeholders, influencers who are well-meaning, who don't hibernate this kind of people when they get information. And by so doing, all we have to do is what we have just done. If you get more information, you can trust us that we won't sweep it under the carpet. We'll go in straight there and bust the place and give the Nigerian people the results that we have shown yesterday. So it shows that the NSCDC is up to the task in Lagos State Command under our dear State Commandant, Mr. Adedotu Sunday Kashiro, who is doing very vehemently well to ensure that it smashes crime and criminality in Lagos State, not only in this area, but also for critical national assets and infrastructure protection, which is one of our major core mandates in the NSCDC.
Well, Mr. Badagry, thank you so much, and we want to say great job. Great job.
Thank you so much.
Truly, it's not easy to
thank you guys too
go to Badagry to go fish this situation out and make sure that justice is being brought. So we appreciate the hard work that your
thank you so much. We are glad.
God bless you all, and thank you for joining us for this conversation again.
Thank you so much.
Now let's go on a short break. When we return, Breakfast Extra continues. Stay with us.
So Breakfast Extra here, of course, serving you the Saturday edition. Now, Nigeria is once again on flood alert, and the numbers are deeply concerning, actually. And the federal government has warned that over 14,000 communities across 33 states and the FCT are at high risk of flooding in 2026, a situation that could impact millions of lives, livelihoods, and critical infrastructure. According to the 2026 annual flood outlook, the threat isn't just widespread, it's layered. Beyond the high-risk areas, thousands more communities fall within moderate and low-risk zones, meaning the scale of potential impact is national. And with peak flooding expected between July and September, questions are already being raised about preparedness, response, of course, systems, and whether lessons from the past disasters have truly been learned.
Because this is not Nigeria's first warning, and yet every year we see devastating consequences from displacement to food insecurity and economic losses. Flooding continues to expose structural and environmental vulnerabilities. So what should be done differently this time? How prepared are we really? And what role do policy, planning, and citizens play in mitigating the risk? To help us unpack all of this, we're now joined by Dr. Dorothy Bassey, environmental, social, and governance advocate. Dr. Bassey, thank you so much for joining us, and I say messiere. Dr. Bassey, let's start from the top. How serious is this latest flood warning, and should Nigerians be genuinely alarmed by these projections again?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for having me. In answering that question, it is a very serious matter, particularly given the data we have and also events recorded over the years. Last year was particularly alarming, or maybe gave us a lot of food for thought, because we saw a lot of pictures, live pictures last year in places we never thought there would be flooding, in some very highbrow areas. So what it means is that nobody is isolated from flooding. And so this alerting message should be taken very, very seriously, not only at a top level, but also my focus always has been at community levels, because the communities are the most vulnerable when you look at the demography of any given country, of any given location. It is at the grassroots level that you see vulnerability at the highest. And so from recent events, particularly that of last year, because I was also very, very much following what was happening, it was quite alarming, seeing cars being submerged, seeing people being swept away. And so for me, I think it is welcoming to have this early alerting message, which we hope that people will take seriously and begin to prepare well ahead of time. Alerting messages are not to scare us and not to frighten us, but to give us time to adequately prepare. I recently gave a lecture. It was a mentoring lecture on contingency planning. So this is one of the steps when you talk about getting ready and being prepared for an eventuality. Sometimes you do not have any warning, but most times, if you're lucky, you have.
All right, Dr. Bassi, we've seen similar warnings in previous years. I mean, but then again, yet flooding remains a recurring crisis. In your view, what are the fundamental drivers behind this climate change? The poor infrastructure or governance gaps?
If you ask me, it's all combined. Policies have to be very, very clear. Policies have to be very firm. Policies have to be understood by all stakeholders. So that is a factor. Poor infrastructure is also a very, very serious factor, because as we know, particularly in Lagos where I live and in a lot of places around the country, drainage has always been a problem. Indiscriminate waste disposal has always been a problem. It is a menace, particularly in Lagos. Even when you look at the Lagos-Ekpe road, it's a new construction. And when I pass through those roads, I'm a little bit sad, because a lot of resource, a lot of time, a lot of effort has been put into ensuring that we have good roads. However, there are no disposable bins all along that stretch. And so you see that the waste heaps up by the side of the road. You do not have any drainage. And when the rain comes, it goes straight, into, people's homes. The nylon bags are everywhere. Everybody carries one. So it's a combination of everything. You cannot say it is one factor. It's a combination of everything. Awareness, we all see the rising temperatures, and we know that the weather is changing, gradually but surely changing. And so we cannot begin to say it is this person's fault, or it's everybody's business to ensure and to see and to learn and to become aware of what is happening around you.
Right. So, Dr. Bassi, would you say that in terms of preparedness, both in state level and in the community, would you say that we are not ready, even though the government has said that their early warning systems have improved? So are you saying that in terms of state and community levels, we're not prepared for what is coming?
I would say we're not really prepared. It has not gotten into our consciousness that, yes, indeed, we are living in low levels. We are living in low lands, all right? I mean, a study has been put forth that Lagos, again, my reference is Lagos, is below sea level, which is to say that you are actually not on high grounds. So if people understand this, if people appreciate this, then they will begin to prepare. You don't wait until the rain starts. I think rain has started, in Lagos or in Nigeria, because the climate is changing. The weather patterns are changing. And if you look back the last 2 weeks, it's been raining. Typically, rain comes around July, August. But this year, I can see signs of early rains. And maybe that is why the government also thought it fit to put out the signs early enough. However, the people need to understand their environment. That's the first thing when you want to talk about preparedness. What are the vulnerable areas in your environment? Are these clearly marked? Do people know? Do people understand? And if they do, what next should they do? Alerting is good. It's one of the first steps when you want to have a disaster or when an incident is about to happen. Alerting is good. But what next? How aware are we Do we have billboards talking about this? Do we have banners all around the cities talking about this? Do we have processes and systems that can help us alleviate this problem? There are no bins around. We do not need a prophet to tell us that at every corner piece, there must be a waste disposal bin, huge ones. Lagos State is trying, no doubt. And again, I'll speak for Lagos. But when you look at these pictures, you know there's a huge gap in system management when it comes to waste disposal and drainage systems. When you look at these pictures, it speaks for itself. And I'm so happy that you are able to get the pictures, because pictures will never lie, and pictures really bring to light what we're talking about. It's not about talking, it's not about seminars, and certainly it's not about preaching. These are live pictures that people can relate with.
Now, talking about Lagos and, of course, Abuja, who are major cities, they're specifically mentioned as high-risk urban centers. Why is urban flooding becoming, even more severe? And what does this say about city planning in Nigeria?
It's becoming a little bit more severe because you are losing. I mean, if we're to quantify the losses in Naira and Kobo, I'm sure we'll all be taken aback. We're not only losing assets, we are losing people. We've had a lot of reports. I don't have the figures here with me right now, but children, the elderly, the vulnerable people being swept away, because when the floods get to a certain level, you see the land shifting. You're also losing your environment, and which brings to bear the matter of tree planting, because when we understand what is happening and when we understand the dynamics of the environment and man's living on the environment.
The fact that she has mentioned that, we're below sea level, I can't just imagine. You guys will have to.
We're above sea level, actually. In Lagos, we're above sea level. We can't be below sea level. If not, we're drowning.
Yeah. Yes, let's talk about economic ripples. Of course, flooding often destroys not just homes, but farmlands. And when our farmlands are destroyed, that disrupts our supply chains. What economic ripple effect should Nigerians be prepared for?
Again, I will repeat, you're losing a lot of assets. You talked about the farms and the soil gets particularly impacted because the floods, the water has to go somewhere. And with it carries all the things you have planted. It causes landslides, it causes a lot of gullies, and it, most importantly, a lot of contaminants, pollutants, because we have factories embedded in some places, though designated as residential, you have factories there. It could be chemical factories, it could be dyeing, factories, it could be paint, it could be anything, because this impacts on nature. It also impacts on the people living there. So, like I said, the first thing is to understand and know what is there. Where are the vulnerable areas? Where are the areas that need to be protected? I don't have figures in Naira and Kobo, but these are huge economic losses. And when you talk about agriculture, certainly it's going to impact on food, crop output. So certainly that is a major concern, if you ask me.
Now, the federal government talks about, strengthening emergency response systems.
Where exactly are these videos you're showing?
Well, we have videos from different communities and different states.
Yeah,
this is currently Abia State.
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Bassi,
and that is where you have a lot of landslides, actually.
Yeah.
That's another area of discussion.
All right, Dr. Bassi, I was asking you, rather, the federal government talks about strengthening emergency response systems, but in practical terms, what should Nigerians expect to see differently this year?
Okay, in practical terms, I expect that there'll be a lot more awareness, because People need to know what to do should there be. And these things happen, floods can happen very, very quickly. In an instant, you have a flood. In an instant. It doesn't take years. So people need to be aware of the steps they need to take. If you know you are living in a low-level area, low-lying ground, then you should try to identify the areas that are high lands so that you can, prepare yourself to move. You should be able to have your emergency kits. You should be able to have numbers to call because we have the NEMA, the Emergency Management Agencies. We should be able to have numbers you can call should there be a situation where you cannot handle it.
Chiwete, what happens really if we're not really prepared for a flooding situation? Because I tell you, Nigeria, we don't have rainy season. I think rain just rains.
I think it's a case of if you're living in Lagos. Yeah, for Lagos, in Lagos, we don't really understand what the weather is saying. Whatever, it's almost like a raffle draw. What you see today is what you get. Right now, Lagos is really hot.
And we have a lot of sand-feeling areas.
Exactly. If you ask me, I think maybe the government is not really concerned because it looks like
right.
The flooding is affecting, the citizens, people who are not so elite, right? A certain class of people. I suspect that's why it's not.
Dr. Bassi, we do want to say thank you, Dr. Dorothy Bassi, for joining us and having this conversation. And truly, this is a conversation that needs to be had. So Nigerians are ready, the citizens are ready to, to brace the raining season. And I hope we pay attention to our environment and pay attention to the government when instructions are being given. Thank you all for listening to this particular conversation. We'll go on a short break. When we return, we have our last segment. Stay with us. And now for the last segment inside of Breakfast Extra, we're talking Focus Africa. Now, a major political and legal development is unfolding in South Africa, one that is raising serious questions about the intersection of law, politics, and power on the continent. Julius Malema, leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters, has been sentenced to 5 years in prison for unlawfully firing a rifle at a political rally back in 2018. Yes, and while the ruling is rooted in law, its political implications are far-reaching. Malema remains one of South Africa's most influential opposition figures with strong support among young voters. But this conviction, if upheld, could disqualify him from parliament and significantly reshape the country's political landscape.
Now, the case itself stems from a 2018 rally where Malema fired what he described as celebratory shots. But prosecutors argue that such actions, especially by a public figure, sets a dangerous precedent. And the court agreed, emphasizing accountability under the law. Still, Malema and his supporters insist this is more than just a legal matter. They argue the case is politically motivated, even calling it a witch hunt, at a time when his party continues to challenge economic inequality and push for radical reforms like land redistribution. So, is this justice taking its course or politics playing out through the court? And what does this mean, not just for South Africa, but for democracy and opposition politics across Africa? Joining us now to unpack this is Robert Matlala, a geopolitical analyst. Thank you, Mr. Robert, for joining. I'm going to go straight into it, of course. Let's start with the ruling itself, right? How strong is the legal basis of this conviction, and does it align with South Africa's constitutional standards?
Okay, thank you once more for having me. Our NPA has a strong legal basis on this matter because the conviction is in line with without even going to Criminal Procedure Act or the Constitution of the country, is in line with the Firearms Control Act of 2000, where it provides that a firearm may only be used in a safe and lawful manner. So the law clearly requires that one must avoid endangering any person or any property. So firing a firearm into the air is generally regarded as unsafe because the bullet must come down, as we know, and somewhere, somehow, it can hit a person and the person can lose his life. because once the bullet is in the air, you lose the whole projectile, the control of the projectile. So this conduct on its own, it's got the potential to injure or to kill someone. So I'm saying, in line with Firearms Control Act of 2000, the NPA, I think they've got a strong legal base on this matter.
Oh, wow. Clearly, we can see the video here of him being recorded. And this case has been framed in two ways: accountability versus political persecution. From where you stand, is this purely a legal situation?
From where I stand, yes, this is a fundamentally a legal issue. But I will not say it is a pure legal case, because, as you know, South Africa still faces unresolved racial and political sensitivities. The case was opened by AfriForum, which is widely viewed as a white civil organization. The magistrate was white, and the white accused who brought this firearm to the gathering of the EFF was acquitted. So these factors do not automatically mean that the case is unlawful, but they do explain why sections of the public perceive this as a political rather than purely legal. But from where I'm standing, removing all these issues that I've mentioned, it's more on a question of accountability. So it's purely legal, even though it's got some a connotation of racial issue here, because, as I said, the party that opened the case are white dominated. The judge was a white magistrate, and the co-accused to Malema was acquitted. The very same person who brought the gun to the gathering is acquitted. He was not found any guilty.
Right. I think we're being joined now by Mazwi Bloss, Member of Parliament of the EFF. Mr. Bloss, thank you for joining us, and we'd like your input on this 5-year, the situation with Malema. What's your take on it, Mr. Bloss?
The previous speaker now just said that the issue is, legal and political. So you can't have a court case that is both legal and political. It's either one of the two. Also, you can't have a court case that is influenced by the political dynamics of any country. It means that the magistrates would have then, digressed from the law, which is needed to apply for this case. But as the EFF, we stand strong, we stand behind the president. I mean, it's something that we expected. Ever since the guilty verdict was given, we expected that they were going to look for an imprisonment sentence, something that has never been done before. And if you look at the entire case over the past 8 years, you will realize that every evidence that was presented before her, she either dismissed it or didn't want to take it into consideration. Hence, accused number 2, who is the white guy, bodyguard of the president, Commander-in-Chief, was released and found not guilty, which then still shows that they were not looking for him. He was just a diversion. The person they were looking for was the Commander-in-Chief. So now, as we stand here, President Julius Malema is being sentenced to a 5-year imprisonment sentence for firing a firearm that he was not given to by anybody, because the person who was perceived to have given him the firearm was released on a not guilty verdict.
Let me ask you, Mr. Bloss, if the sentence is upheld, Malema could lose his parliamentary seat. How significant would that be for the EFF and even opposition parties in South Africa?
Well, that question that doesn't arise, because that's why we've taken this to the High Court, and we believe that sober judges who are not influenced by politics, who are going to look at the legal prescripts of this case, are going to dismiss it. I'll just give you one example now. Accused number 2, when he was going to be released on a not guilty verdict, the NPA, the prosecutors, wrote to him before the magistrate could release the verdict and told him to come and collect his gun. How then did the prosecutors know that accused number 2 was going to be released on a not guilty verdict? That alone shows that there are serious political influences in this case. There are people behind, the magistrates. It shows a conflicted relationship between the prosecutor and the magistrate, because it means that the magistrate would have informed the NPA before she gave a judgment that I'm releasing accused number 2 on a not guilty verdict. Hence, they told him to come and fetch his gun. So when the not guilty verdict was been, given to accused number 2, the gun was no longer in custody. It was no longer before the court. So all of that alone, when we presented to the High Court and other things that would have presented to the magistrate, that she completely ignored. There has never been a case, that even the NPA would have brought before the court to say matters of this magnitude had received imprisonment before. there was no case. So this was first of its kind that we see that a person being sentenced to 5 years just because he had possession of a firearm that he was not licensed to. We wanted a suspended sentence. We wanted him to be fined. All of those things were not followed, but they wanted to make sure that they send him to jail. But unfortunately, they had failed, and they are not going to succeed.
Yeah. So, Mr. Robert, based on what Mr. Bloss have said in terms of this situation, that this is the first of its kind, and having to receive a 5 years imprisonment due to shooting a firearm into the air in a public space. What's your take? Because he's insinuating that there's a lot of, political fingerprints in this situation. What's your take on that, Mr. Robert?
I tend to agree with the member of the EFF because, as I said, and I was going to put it at the end of our discussion. You know what's happening currently here in South Africa? You can see that most of our organizations or institutions are somehow influenced by politics. So that's why we find ourselves, we don't have a confidence to our judiciary system purely because everything is got to do with oppressing a certain group of people or a certain organization. So I agree with him to a point, to an extent that you can see even the way this case has been dragging, the manner in which it was conducted, and I'm still going to maintain that we have the ad hoc committees from the parliament, we've got Badagry Commission, but the cabinet. In those sittings, we've picked up that most of the processes that are supposed to be following or be confined to the certain parameters of the law are influenced. So that's why I'm saying I'm leaning towards the speaker that this case is politically measured.
Let me come back to you, Mr. Bloss. Looking at the fact that the 2027 elections, of course, it's close for fast approaching. How will this affect the stance of the EFF?
No, look. The stance of the EFF is not affected by anyone. The commander-in-chief is still with us. He's busy even today doing the work of the EFF. So nothing has changed. The politics that are happening there in court, we are going to deal with them. As I've mentioned, that we have taken the case now to the High Court, and our legal team are busy preparing the papers to make sure that we put up our submission. So politically, as an organization, we are not affected. We are not shaken. We're a political party. We are revolutionaries. These are the things that, when you take part of the struggle, you accept that these are your fates. It's either you are going to be killed, you are going to be imprisoned. Those are part of the right-wing politics, that when those people disagree with you, they want to take you to jail or they either want to kill you. We have seen it across the African continent. You can cite the likes of Muammar Gaddafi. You can cite Patrick Lumumba. We have a lot of African struggle heroes that have been killed because of their political views and their political stance. Just the last one, you would have seen that the same people who brought this case, the AfriForum, they went to the United States. They went to America to report the commander-in-chief, to report President Julius Malema to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump asked the question, why is this man not arrested? Hence, you see this sentencing of imprisonment. The execution of the White House is being done in South Africa. It's purely the mandate of Donald Trump, who wants to see President Julius Malema, being taken to prison because of his political views, because of his radical posture in terms of the economy of this country, and how South Africa must take a radical posture.
Mr. Bloss, I hear you on that, but I want to just ask or find out if for some reason Mr. Julius Malema is restrained politically, probably to run for office or something like that. Is there a contingency plan for the EFF?
It's not going to happen. That's what I'm saying. It's a question that does not arise. It's not going to happen. We are at the High Court now. If for some reason we lose our case at the High Court, we are going to take it to the Supreme Court of Appeal. If we lose our case there, we are taking it to the Constitutional Court. So we've got at least 5 to 10 years with this case if it happens that where we are taking it is not going to be, favoring the views of the EFF or to favor what we believe this case is to be. So those things don't arise. Maybe if the case goes all the way to the Constitutional Court, we can come back and then speak on those issues to say, okay, we are now at the highest court of the land. If then the EFF continues to lose the case, then what happens? Then maybe at that time we can then answer that question. But for now, the question does not arise. There's no contingency plan. There's no need for a contingency plan. The president is going to take us through the coming elections. He's going to take us through the 2029 elections. We are with him. He's strong. He's with with us, a question for a new leader of the EFF does not arise, because that is exactly a question that comes from the white minorities. That is what they want. When they persecute the president of the EFF, it's not just him, but they are, they want to kill the ideas of the EFF. They want to persecute the ideas of the EFF. And we are saying we're not going to allow that. That question does not arise. The ideas of the EFF will be carried through by the President and Commander-in-Chief, President Julius Malema.
Right. So, Robert, Malema has been granted leave to appeal and remains free for now. Realistically, how long do you think this legal battle is going to drag on for, and what outcomes are possible?
I'm not legally clear on the exact time, but what I know that appeal processes in South Africa normally take time and can drag on for extended periods. So the appeal court may revisit the conviction and the sentence, and there's a possibility that it could reconsider the charges or revise the sentence, including the 5-year direct imprisonment, depending on its findings. But for me, where I'm seated, I think they can arrive to a point of suspending all this sentencing. Maybe it can be, let's say the 5-year sentence can be suspended and not a direct imprisonment. That's my feeling. But to answer your question, in short, the appeal process can take long. So I think Mr. Malema is still going to do some, mileage in politics while we're waiting for the appeal process.
Right. So, Maswi, my question now is, you've talked about, this situation being, politically motivated, and there's some evidence that you said the judge ignored. Is this something you would like to share with us, those evidence?
Yeah, look, there are a lot of issues that we can bring into consideration. Maybe let's look at it in terms of after the magistrates had issued the guilty verdict. There was a social worker that was required to come and speak to the conditions of the commander-in-chief, to say why does he not deserve to be imprisoned. And one of those conditions was that from where the commander-in-chief comes from in Seshego, on a daily basis, he's feeding close to about 500 people on a feeding scheme. And we were saying, or the legal team was making the fact that if you take this man to prison, you are going to destabilize those communities. You are going to, impoverish those people who rely heavily on him. Just a single community of close to about 500 people on a daily basis are being fed through the hands of the commander-in-chief, through the hands of President Julius Malema. The magistrate said it doesn't matter, because she's a white person. She does not come from poverty. She does not understand hunger. She said it's irrelevant. The mere fact that he's got a feeding scheme is irrelevant to this court. And you ask yourself, what kind of a magistrate is so heartless that she would rather see 500 people go hungry every day just because he wants to punish the commander-in-chief. But also, besides that, you must then go and look at the case itself. We had said that we had used a toy gun. It was not a real gun. There were experts that came and presented ballistics, and it was shown that the firearm that was in question, that was before the court, was never even in East London at the day of the incident. That was proven in court. She dismissed it. She said, no, this ballistic expert is not an expert, or whatever the issue might be. So everything that was presented in court, which was contradictory to the narrative that was presented by the NPA, she dismisses it irrelevant. She dismisses it as something that does not exist. So all of that, when presented to a higher court with the sober judges, they will look at those things and take them into consideration and then throw this matter out of the courtroom.
Just before we wrap this conversation up, Mr. Robert, how does South Africa's handling of this case compare with how other African countries deal with high-profile political prosecutions?
Maybe to how all other African countries handle such cases. However, my view is that we need to continue striving to separate politics from legal matters, even though in practice the line between the two is often very thin, but particularly in high-profile political cases. But as much as I advocate for the fact that political or leaders in any form, they need to conduct themselves within the parameters of the law. But I find it very strange on how the president is said, especially for opposition parties or small parties across Africa, whereby the law that is applied to them is not the same law that applies to either a ruling party or a party with more supporters. So to answer your question, when we compare, I see most of the time in other African countries, it's more related, if we're closer to the elections, it's more related to preventing or stopping small parties to make inroads in terms of garnering votes or support. They'll incarcerate them for no reason. So basically, but if we can find a way of separating the two, South Africa, as I said, is still suffering from the issue of color. We're still suffering from the issue of oppression, and even though it's in a very subtle way, but we're still suffering from that.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Robert Matlala and Mr. Blows. Thank you for having this conversation. Of course, as we know, this situation is still unfolding, and we will follow up and see how it ends. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Now we have come to the end of Breakfast Extra Saturday edition. It was an amazing conversation with you, Chiwetel, today.
Yes,
How
it
do you
was,
feel?
of course. I feel great. I feel good. Looking forward to tomorrow, of course, where we'll have another conversation. Of course, watch out for my monologue as well, because I'm going to talk about something quite interesting.
Right.
Yeah, I'm looking
So
forward to
based
that.
on all the conversations today, which one would you say, struck a nerve for you?
I think it has to do with the very first one, which is our legislatures, because these people represent us, right? People represent they represent us, they represent us. But at the end of the day, you're wondering what exactly are they doing over there? And I think also we, the citizens, are the problem. We don't even know what they should be doing for us. We don't even know what we should be demanding from them.
Right.
Because these are the people who make the laws that we follow at the end of the day.
Well, all I can say is we're here tomorrow, but before I go, I have to say something. I took over from myself. The late Buhari is me. He was a partner. If I took over from him, is that not from myself? President Tinubu spoke during his meeting with the 36 state coordinators of the Renewed Hope ambassadors at the presidential villa. It is us.
That's an interesting question, because what that tells you now is that we can no longer, or rather APC representatives, right, those who are supporters of the APC, either active in government or in whatever way they are, can no longer claim that any problem or any issue that they're facing now in Nigeria, especially insecurity, was inherited.
Well, like he said, he is Buhari and Buhari is him. I hope my producer would have that shot play out as we go. And, let's watch that video before I tell you goodbye.
I didn't have to look back, because the truth is, I took over for myself. The late Buhari is me. He was a partner. And if I took over from him, is that not from myself? So, if something is wrong, fine. Live with it, correct it, move on. The life voyage is not going to be easy. And so many of you that are traveling with me, I can only stand before you and say you will not regret it.
Okay.
And we stand in front of you and remind you and hope that we don't regret it. Until we come your way tomorrow. Have a lovely Saturday and see you tomorrow, Sunday. Bye.
Bye.